Hi everybody, I'm going to give you some clues and I would like to see if you can guess what I have been doing recently. I needed one of these, a screwdriver. I needed some screws and some nails as well. I needed a measuring tape. I also needed a hammer, but I didn't need one of these. I didn't need a saw because someone else had already made sure that everything was the right size. Could you guess what I've been doing? I have been building some furniture. And I was really glad that there were instructions with the furniture, or else I would have been very lost and it wouldn't have turned out right at all. Here's some advice. If you like building Lego or Meccano or any of those things, keep practicing because it will come in very handy whenever you have to build some flat pack furniture in the future. In today's story, there is some building going on, but not furniture, something far more special. When the people of Israel were travelling through the wilderness, they had a very special tent called a tabernacle, where the people could worship God and where God could live among his people. And then as they moved on somewhere else on their journey, they could just pack it up and bring it with them. Now, of course, they had reached the promised land, that land that God had promised to give them. So they didn't need a building that they could pack up and bring with them. Last week, we met King David, and King David had a great idea. He decided that he was going to make God a very special type of house. But God said, no, I don't want you to make me a very special type of house, but your son will do this. The next king was King David's son Solomon, and Solomon is known for being a very, very wise king. He asked God to give him wisdom to help him to be a good king. Wisdom means not just knowing all the right answers, but knowing how to use them to make good decisions. People used to come from far and wide to ask Solomon's advice because he was very wise and good at making decisions. Solomon had the job of building a very special place, a very special house for God called a temple. Building this temple in Jerusalem took a lot of work. All of the wood was brought from faraway lands. They gathered the iron, the gold, the silver, the bronze, all of the things they needed to build this special temple. The temple took 7 years to build. Imagine it starting when you're in primary 1 and it isn't finished until you're in primary 7. That's how long it took to build the temple. It took 7 years. When the temple was finished, King Solomon gathered all of the people together in that place. He praised God for how great he is, and he prayed that the people would always follow God and obey him. At that time, a great cloud came down and the glory of God filled the place. That means that the people could see just how amazing God is. The temple was a very special place. It was a place that the people could worship God. It was split into lots of different parts. There were 3 main parts: the outer court, the holy place, and the most holy place. In the most holy place, there was a very, very special box known as the Ark of the Covenant. And inside the Ark of the Covenant were the large stone tablets that the 10 Commandments had been written on. And this very special box had been carefully carried throughout the journey through the wilderness. And it was in the most holy place. That was the most special part of the temple because that is where God's presence was. That is where God lived among his people. There were lots of very special rules about who could go to each part of the temple. The most holy place was the most special part. And there was a very, very important rule. At the entrance to the most holy place was a really, really large, very beautiful curtain which separated the most holy place from the holy place. And on only one day in the year, one person, the high priest, was able to go through that curtain and to enter the most holy place. The high priest went there to offer sacrifices for the sins of the people. Animals' blood was offered so that the people's sin could be forgiven. The people couldn't go to God on their own. They needed someone to go for them. Their sin kept them away because God is pure and holy. But using animal sacrifices to pay for the sin of the people was a bit like tidying your bedroom, but just pushing everything under the bed out of the way. It was never really finished. And this sacrifice had to be offered over and over and over again. But God promised that he would send someone to rescue his people from sin forever. Who did he send? He sent Jesus. When Jesus, God's perfect Son, died on the cross to take the punishment for my sin and yours, that curtain in the temple that separated the most holy place from the holy place was torn in two, from top to bottom. It was such a large curtain that would have been absolutely impossible for a person to do. But nothing is impossible for God. That didn't happen by accident. That happened to show that when Jesus died on the cross, he made a way for us to have our sin forgiven and to come to God ourselves. We don't need anyone to come to God for us. We can talk to him ourselves. The sacrifice that the high priest made had to be made over and over and over and over again. But Jesus died once and for all to rescue God's people from sin forever. Jesus rose from the dead and is alive today in heaven. He's the only one who can rescue you from sin. Have you trusted him today? Are you wondering what happened next for King Solomon? Was he always a good king? Did he always obey God? Come back next week to find out.